What has this to do with food? And what would you think if you were given this for lunch? You wouldn't think very much of it. But a pet rabbit would love it. So what is food? What's it for?
Food keeps you alive, so I don't get hungry. If you don't eat, you could die. Food makes you grow.
Keeps us strong.
Gives you vitamins. It's a fact of life.
When you see this symbol, if you want, you can stop the tape. All this is food. Shelves and shelves full of it. Food in packets, food in jars, food in tins, food from the UK, food from Europe, food from Africa. This soup comes from Scotland. These sardines come from Italy. These oranges come from Israel. There's food with funny names like shooters, jumblies, frosties, Wheatos. There's food we may never have seen before. We all think we know what food is, but do we? Are trees food? No, but we can get food from them. And leaves? And roots we dig out of the ground? Are they food? A carrot is a root and a cabbage is a leaf. There are so many different vegetables. Here are parsnips, aubergines, leeks and courgettes. Then what about animals? The farmer keeps these sheep for their wool, and he sells them for meat for our dinners. Everything we eat comes from plants or animals. What food might come from a farm like this one? What food do we get from animals? What food do we get from plants? These children have a bag of food from the supermarket. They're going to find out which food comes from animals and which comes from plants.
It's cheese and it comes from an animal. That's a cow. A plant. Animal. Animal. I think it's a plant because it's got the bread on and all the spices.
But it's got cheese on it too. So they're both right. Here are some foods which have come straight from plants or animals. What are they? This is wheat, and we grind it to make flour. We use sugar cane to make both sugar and syrup. From milk, we make butter. When we dry grapes, we get currants. This doesn't look like something you can eat, but it's ginger, and when it's ground, we can use it for flavouring. If we mix these things together in the right amounts, if we cook them at the right heat and for the right length of time, what will we get? Let's see. First, melt the butter, but be careful not to let it burn. In goes the sugar, and after that the syrup. Mix them together until the sugar and syrup have completely melted. We add ginger to the flour and stir it in. Then the flour goes into the saucepan and we mix it with everything else. When the mixture has cooled, we can roll it out. Now can you guess what it's going to be? Gingerbread men. And the currants are for the eyes and buttons. "10 minutes in the oven and then they're done. Fat ones and thin ones, ready to eat. And they were made from these." Who would want to swap a gingerbread man for grass and flowers? This doesn't look much like food, but it would if you were an animal or an insect. Insects love the nectar in the flowers. And a cow would think it was rich if it had so much grass all to itself. But why does a cow need food? Why do we all need food? We don't eat just because food looks good or tastes nice. If we're going to grow, we need to eat the right food, just like this calf has to. A baby needs food. It needs milk from its mother to make it grow. As we get older, different people eat different amounts of food. Some people use up lots of energy and they eat huge platefuls. Some people don't need so much. When you're old, you might not eat as much as children do. But for a healthy life, we all need food. Everybody needs food, both young and old. But does all our food come from farms and gardens? No. Some of it comes from places like this. This is really a sort of factory. A food factory. The food that is made here began as a plant. This started as wheat in a farmer's field a long way away. But it has to be changed or processed into flour, and then other things are added to make it into dough. But it's not ready to eat yet. The dough has to rise, and then it's baked in this enormous oven. When it's been baked, it becomes the bread we know. The last job is to slice it and wrap it up ready to be taken to the shops. Wheat can be made into many different foods as well as bread. There's pasta and breakfast cereals, cakes and biscuits. Perhaps you can think of some more. We eat a lot of food raw, just as it comes off the tree or out of the ground, though we usually have to clean it first. Human beings have been doing this ever since they lived in caves. And for just as long, they've been eating foods which have been processed. There's nothing new or strange about it. There are some things we just can't eat. Our stomachs can't cope with grass, for instance, and it would make us sick if we ate it. But when a cow eats grass, it changes or processes it into milk, which we drink, or meat, which we eat. Most of the food we eat has been processed in some way, and not always in the factory. Processing doesn't just mean making food in a factory. We process food every time we get a meal ready. For instance, we process it when we bake it or boil it. We process an egg in boiling water. We spread boiled oranges on half-burnt wheat. We pour boiling water on the leaves of a plant to make tea. Everywhere in the world, people are cooking food or mixing it together, and that means processing it. Of course, we don't all eat the same sorts of food. We don't all have the same tastes. But whatever we eat, we can work out how it's been processed and whether it's come from an animal or a plant.
Peas from a plant. Fish from sea. I don't know. Oh. Chip shop. No. Potato. Plant. Oh, yeah.
And how has the food been processed?
That in the grill. That fish. Fried.
What about the chips?
Been cooked in a pan. Been cooked in the microwave. In one of those fat things that you cook chips in.
So the fish is from the sea, the chips are from a plant, and they've both been fried, and the peas have been boiled. Now, what about this?
It's spaghetti bolognese. The meat comes from an animal, and the spaghetti comes from a type of plant. Is it the spaghetti wheat? It's been boiled, and the meat has been stewed.
Are they right? Is there anything they've missed? Food doesn't get to your table by magic. All day, lorries are unloading at shops and markets. In big towns and cities, where most people are still in bed, shopkeepers and cafe owners go down to the market to buy the fruit, vegetables and meat which they will sell to their customers. Some of the food is taken to cafes or restaurants, because we don't eat all our meals at home. From time to time, families like to go out for a meal. And plenty of people at work have their lunch in a cafe or a canteen. You probably eat your lunch at school. In a big city, there are hundreds of different places where you can go out and have something to eat. Everybody likes to go out for a meal, and there are all kinds of restaurants and cafes, but this isn't one of them. It's a school hall, and it's time for dinner. But it's not the usual school dinner. These children are going to try foods from many different parts of the world. There are thousands of different foods, and it would be very odd if we all liked the same things. What we eat may depend on where we live, and some foods we may not even recognise. What sort of food is this? Is it a plant or an animal? Have a look inside it. It looks like meat. This is a haggis from Scotland. It's made from meat and oats. You may not recognise it if you've never seen it before.
Zena, she likes it. Is it lovely?
Everybody likes cream cakes, but what would you think if you'd never seen one before? And what about chips? They look really odd. These white things are beans, and they taste lovely when they've just begun to sprout. They're a food from China, but you can find them in the shops or grow them yourself. Italians often eat their meat and vegetables with spaghetti. In Mexico, they add beans and chilies. In India, they add curry to their meat and vegetables to give them a spicy taste. And look at all this bread. Breadsticks from Italy, black bread from Germany, naan from India, long white bread from France. Bread is an important food in lots of different countries.
Did you see him?
What about the way we eat? We don't all have the same ideas about that. In America, they hold a fork in their right hand, while in Britain, we use the left. But even when we know what we're doing, it's not always easy. So what must it be like for other people? This is a splade, and it's a knife, fork and spoon all in one. And if that seems difficult, what about chopsticks?
Oh, you've got some others.
In some countries, people think it's polite to eat food with your fingers.
Is it nice? Can I try?
Other people think it's bad manners. It all depends where you live. There are so many different kinds of food. Why is that? Does the countryside have anything to do with it? How does the weather help? This is good farming land. It's not too hilly and the soil is easy to plough and sow. A farmer must look after the land if we're to have food to eat. But a farmer needs the right kind of weather with a good mixture of sun and rain. Plants need both of these if they're going to grow. Not all farms have such good land or can use such modern machinery as this farm can. Would it be easy to grow food in hilly country like this? Or in a country with a lot of sun? Or where there's too much rain? Wherever people live, in hilly countries, wet countries, or hot countries, they need to eat. We all need food. Not just enough food, but the right kind of food. So how do we get it? Food has to be grown, and it has to be processed. Then there has to be some way of getting it to the people who need it. Somebody has to bring it to the shops. Then we choose what we want to eat. And we need to choose the foods that are right for us.